Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ellie, for starting us up. We can see there's people are starting to join. We'll give everybody a few minutes and then we'll get started. You can see numbers are rising. Hi, Svetlana.
Hello.
Maybe while people are joining, if you can let us know in the chat box where you are joining us from today.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce half of these places. No, you've said that, Ellie.
Still nice to see where everyone is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great mix.
It looks like we've got people from across the country, somebody from Germany as well. Hi there. From Odessa, from Zaporizhia, from Kyiv, from Lviv, Rivne, Mykolaiv. Lots of people from Dnipro, it seems.
Yeah,
Hi, everybody. Okay, we'll just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. Just to let the numbers and people grab a cup of tea and come into the room. Hi, Irina. Hi, Anna.
Ivano-Frankivsk.
Yeah. Hi, Natalia. Hi, Nina. I'm seeing lots and lots of women joining us. I haven't seen any men so far, I don't think. Do we have any men on the...
We're right now protecting women
Amazing.
being able to take a part in it.
Yeah. Hi, Alex. Hi there, Svetlana. Thanks for joining. More people from Zaporizhia. Hi, Helen. From Kharkiv. Do we have anybody here who's joining us for the first time? If you're here for the first time, can you write yes or a Y in the chat box, please? Yeah, so a few yeses coming up. Brilliant.
It's lovely to see you here.
Yeah, lots of people joining for the first time. Brilliant. Hi, Christina. Okay, we'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get started. Hi, Natalia. Thanks for joining. Okay, I'm going to wait for it to go over 200 people and then we're going to start. Fingers crossed that will be in the next 10 seconds.
Want to go.
It's on a knife edge. We're waiting.
There we go.
Right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining this National Geographic Learning Teachers' Day for you wonderful teachers in Ukraine. Let me first of all introduce you to who we have here. So we have Ellie Setterfield, we have Flo Feast, and we have Irina Maliarova. Irina, how do
Maliarova.
Maliarova. Thank you, Irina. My name is Tim Pearce. I'm the regional manager for Ukraine. You probably, for those of you who have been on these webinars before, you may have seen me. We normally have Alex Warren, who hosts these webinars, but unfortunately Alex is traveling at the moment, so sadly you will have to do with me for the next couple of hours. Just before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to use the chat function, which seems to be working perfectly fine throughout the talks. Please keep things polite. Please keep things on topic as well. So feel free to chat about what's being said throughout the talks that you're going to hear. Any kind of specific questions, then please feel free to write those in the Q&A, which you will see next to the chat. Ellie, is the Q&A turned on?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, brilliant. So the Q&A should be working and we can answer those questions, I guess, after the talks happen, or if Ellie or Flo want to answer those during the talks, they're more than welcome to. We're really here so that you can learn something practical, and I'm sure that you'll get something from these talks which are focused on New Close-Up. Flo is going to be talking about New Close-Up for effective and enjoyable exam preparation. And Ellie's going to be talking about teaching grammar in context. So we've got two fantastic talks coming up. Irina, I'm going to hand over to you because I know you want to say a few things. So
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm a senior LT consultant. I hope some of you have been to other conferences and other events that we make as proud suppliers of National Geographic Learning in Ukraine, and we are really proud being able to represent this publishing house as it brings the greatest ideas and the new approaches to learning and also teaching. I hope you will enjoy it. I myself, being a teacher, one of the teachers for New Close-Up also can say, yes, thank you, Pani Svetlana, supporting my idea of it. I hope you will enjoy this conference as we meet to talk about important topics, and also I really grateful to have Ellie and Flo today for team coming and giving us this prep talk. I believe it will be very helpful to you. If you need to contact me after this webinar and you need methodological support, please, I will leave my link for you in the chat at the end of the webinar. So, thank you.
thank you, Irina. Irina, let me also just say what a wonderful job you've done over the last couple of years as well. You know, it's been a pleasure to have you on board, and the other members of the team at Linguist. As Irina has said, we'll put the contact details at the end in the chat. Just one more word on the certificates, Irina. I think you mentioned.
Yes. I need to mention your certificates. They will be sent to you in 10 days after this webinar with all information and also program written in Ukrainian. So stay tuned. It will come to your emails. If you would experience any problems with it, you can contact me. I will help you to receive the new one. Your name will be written in the certificate. You will receive your personal number for certificate, so you can just use it for your training. Yes.
Yep, thank you, Irina. And just to confirm, there was a question there about the recording, which I think, Ellie, can you confirm will be sent via Zoom within 24 hours. So you will receive an email from Zoom, and there will be a link to the recording in the email, and that's usually with you after about within 24 hours. Thanks, Svetlana. Okay, let's get cracking. So I'm going to hand you over to Flo. Flo, do you want to just say a few words about yourself and then get started? Thanks.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for logging in today. It's great to have you here. Sorry, I can't actually see you, but I can see all your comments in the chat. And yeah, please do keep commenting there. So my name is Flo. I work for National Geographic Learning. My background is in teaching and teacher training. So I spent a lot of years teaching around the world and delivering CELTA courses to trainee teachers. So the session today is going to be a practical one. Of course, I'm going to introduce you to New Close-Up. But yeah, hopefully you'll come away today with some knowledge of New Close-Up, but also some activity ideas that you can utilize with your students, whatever courses you're currently using. Perfect. So I'll just start sharing and get the correct slide and display. There we go. Hopefully that'll be the right one. Okay, so if any of you are sitting there thinking, I don't actually help students prepare for exams at the moment, don't worry. A lot of the activities we'll look at today can be used in a more general English classroom as well. Okay, so don't go anywhere. Stay where you are. So as I said, New Close-Up obviously is the focus today. This is what it looks like. If you do have questions about the course, do obviously reach out and let us know. Use the Q&A today as well, and obviously the email address that you'll get for Arena later on. Now, question for you. So please do use the chat if you're comfortable doing so. What skills and knowledge do learners need for exam success? Okay, and we're talking English language exam success here, and there's lots. Feel free to pop some ideas into chat. I've put up an example there, a range of vocabulary. Okay, anything else? I will try and look in the chat. Great. Okay, listening, speaking, thinking. Yes, absolutely. Knowing about the exam structure, of course, that is certainly useful. Yeah, use of English, great. So yeah, a mixture of kind of grammar, vocab, great. Yeah, lovely. Critical thinking, nice, absolutely. Being able to analyze things, yeah, be it, yeah, a text, fantastic. Time management, absolutely, great. So yeah, lots and lots of things. I've just included a few here from a very quick brainstorm I did, but yeah, there's certainly lots more. There's a whole range of things, aren't there? There's, all the things you'd normally have in a general English class as well. We don't suddenly forget about that generally in an exam prep course. We still need to deal with vocabulary, with grammar, as you've said, the skills and the sub-skills of those as well. Getting the general idea of texts, or being able to, as someone said, kind of analyze them in more depth, get a more detailed comprehension of them. Some things obviously we'll see on here and that you've mentioned more specifically relating to exams, such as time management within the exam. It's obviously quite crucial, isn't it? Ability to read the question, that's certainly something that's worth focusing on with learners. No matter how amazing your English is, if you answer a different question, you're probably not going to get the recognition for it. Paraphrasing kind of overlaps both, but certainly important in exams for getting those higher grades with writing and speaking. But nice outside of exams too. You sound a bit more interesting, don't you, if you use different words and different language. So we're going to see some of these things featured in the activities we'll look at today. But yeah, basically there's lots to cover, isn't there? Another quick question. Does exam preparation have to mean exam task, or not? No, Svetlana said, great. Very passionate about this one. Absolutely no. Okay, good. I think, yeah, we're pretty much in agreement. Yeah, brilliant. Not only, absolutely. Yeah, that's key. So no, it doesn't just have to mean that. Of course, it's important learners do get familiar with the exam. We want them to be fully prepared when they go in to take the exam. They know what's coming. They know what sort of things they have to write or do. But of course, no, sorry, I'm still seeing all your comments. But yeah, we still can do other things too. We still need to help them with all those other areas of grammar, vocabulary. And also, we want them to, as much as possible, enjoy the learning that they're doing. If they're just doing exam tasks, it'll be a little bit dull probably, won't it? And chances are they won't necessarily actually make that much progress if it's just limited to that. So today, we're going to look at activities that are a bit different, but can still help learners prepare for exams as they go along. So I've split the course up into sections, the sorts of sections that you'll see in different exams, different international exams. So starting with a couple of activities related to use of English, and specifically sort of vocabulary as the key focus with these. Just to do a very quick shout out before we go into one of my activities, to Spark, which is our online platform. You may have heard of it. If you have, pop yes into the chat. I'm going to mention it again later, but the activity I'm going to show you relates to crosswords. Do you use crosswords with your students? So it's going to get confusing now because we're going to have yes and no potentially for different things. Type crosswords if you use them. I'm guessing a lot of you do. I'm not going to pretend to have invented crosswords, and neither are we. But they are a nice way to vary things in the classroom. Take a break from the trusty gap fill. Say nothing wrong with those, but it's nice to have a change sometimes, isn't it? And the great thing with Spark is that you can assign students work, but in a more kind of game puzzle format, such as these. So hopefully learners actually enjoy, some of the homework that you might be giving them. So crosswords are lovely. So I use them to review vocabulary. I'm guessing that's probably the same for some of you. And yeah, so we see, yeah, you often use them. Fantastic. Also, you may well use them perhaps in a test framework. That can be quite nice. So as a way to kind of streamline your teach stage, start off with something like this to see what the learners already know of the vocabulary. Then, you can focus that teach stage and just teach the gaps in their knowledge before testing them again with another activity to see where we're at now. And it's quite nice to use that framework, I find, with vocabulary, especially living in this sort of modern world now where students are experiencing English in all different ways without always realizing it, with sort of Netflix and TikTok and other sort of social media. And, it is vocab that they can often kind of pick up more sporadically thanks to that. So rather than, wasting time teaching them everything, and some of it is already known, we can focus our teach stage a little bit more. But yeah, crosswords are nice because there's variety. Hopefully students find them engaging. They're things that, some students will do in their free time for pleasure, perhaps. But I'm going to show you now another activity that I use that's similar, but I'm a bit stingy with my students, and I will just give them half a crossword. Okay. And you can do this in the physical classroom or online. It works well both ways. Split the group into student A's and student B's, and then into sort of smaller groups within that, pairs or threes. Okay. And, if you're online, then this is great. You can pop them into breakout rooms, or, in the physical classroom, just have them in small groups, twos or threes, but they all have the same piece of paper. So here we have what student A's will have in front of them. Okay. And as you can see, they've got 4 words going down there, but there's no clues or anything, which often we usually see, don't we, with crosswords. So student A's have the job of coming up with definitions, synonyms, examples for conveying those 4 words. Okay, and you could make this bigger. Okay, and these are all words just to say that they have met in a previous unit or something. So this is being used for revision. Okay, so they will, they will hopefully be familiar with these already, but we're going to kind of review them now. So they will have to think. Let's take breathtaking as an example to do together. Okay, let's start with, what do we usually use breathtaking to describe? Okay, because these are adjectives here. So have a think. What would we usually use? And pop in chat. In what kind of context would breathtaking appear? A view. Thank you, Alexander. Yeah, typically I always think of a view first with this. Absolutely. Okay, so it's an adjective to describe a view. Can you think of a synonym or a partial synonym for breathtaking? Stunning. Nice, Natalia. Yes. Yeah, brilliant. Picturesque, lovely, nice word, great. So yeah, they'll hopefully come up with something like this. So yeah, another way to describe, another word to describe an incredible view. Okay, a breathtaking. Sorry, we've got breathtaking, a stunning view. Okay, maybe an example they could think of as well. I don't know, the Eiffel Tower at sunset, I would imagine, would be quite breathtaking, perhaps. So they're coming up with this together, helping each other out. Okay, and they work through those. Student Bs, they're not just chilling out. They have got this here in front of them. Okay, so they've got those 4 words going across, and they'll be doing the same. So let's take spacious as an example for this one. What would we use spacious to describe typically? A room, nice, absolutely, great. Apartments, great. So yeah, it could be kind of buildings, couldn't it? Yeah, absolutely. So rooms or going a bit bigger than that, great. So maybe again, some sort of synonym, partial synonym, that enormous, nice, large. Okay, great. So another way to describe an enormous room, an enormous building, a large building, great. Could again think of an example. I mean, often kind of museums and art galleries are these are spacious, aren't they? So they can come up with this, okay, working together. And then, as you're probably already anticipating, we're now going to separate students out and put them into A-B pairs. So if you're teaching online, rearranging the breakout room, so there's one person A and one person B in each one, or in the physical classroom, doing that. Okay, and now student B might ask student A, what's 1 down? Okay, because as we can see on their worksheet, that's a gap for them. So student A is not going to just say breathtaking, okay, because that defeats the point. It's a good idea to do an example with learners, okay, just to make sure they know that. I've even done this with kind of teacher training groups, and I have had a pair. I obviously didn't set it up very well, but they were just doing that, just saying the words, which isn't quite the point. So do a demo, but then, yeah, student B will go, okay, what's 1 down? And student A will use that definition that they came up with. So another way to describe a stunning view, another word for that, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then hopefully student B will go, yes, and pop in breathtaking. Okay, as I say, they are words they'll have met before. Okay, and then we'll have student A asking student B, what's 7 across? And they've got a few clues here, haven't they? They've dropped quite lucky with this one. So student B will go, okay, another way to describe a huge room, okay, or a building like an art gallery, okay, that's very big. Okay, and then hopefully student A will be able to pop in spacious. And then by the end, everyone will hopefully have a crossword that looks like this. Of course, we'll have been going around monitoring and, supporting as needs be, but ideally kind of leaving them, to kind of get on with it as much as possible. And if the student doesn't get it immediately, we'll leave it, come back to it later, because sometimes, it's there, isn't it? We just need a little bit more processing time. As well, when you're setting up the task, more so if you're in the physical classroom, do make sure they know not to show their piece of paper to their partner, because then it falls apart as well. So a bit, kind of careful task setup with this one. But yeah, a nice way to review language, a little bit of a different take on the average crosswords. In terms of, uses for this and why I like doing it, and if there's anything you like about this or any questions you have, do feel free to pop them in the chat. I mean, for me, it's still, like with other crosswords, is a great way to review vocabulary at the end of a lesson, a unit, a term, and get them to kind of go over that again. And another key thing, and I like to have this in as many activities as possible, peer teaching. And unfortunately for us teachers, studies do show that learners often learn more from their peers than they do from us, actually. It's more memorable, and not just for the person doing the learning, but also the one teaching and helping their partner. It gives them another chance to kind of use that language again and reinforces it further for them. And you may well have noticed, we mentioned paraphrasing before. It is all about that. They're coming up with synonyms, partial synonyms, descriptions, examples, to get that word across that they're not allowed to say. Okay. And yeah, it's just that little bit more challenging for learners too. Your average crossword, you've got all the clues there ready, whereas here learners are having to kind of do the harder part and come up with those clues themselves. And yeah, for us, it's a nice one, particularly in the physical classroom. Typical crosswords are like this as well, but it's a nice one to monitor because you can actually literally see kind of the gaps quite easily that are appearing, so helping to sort of diagnose where those issues are and to know, what to go over again. Okay, so this is one activity I like to do to revise that key vocab for the, upcoming exams, say, or just generally. Another one that I find effective is Story Builder. Now, there's quite a lot of activities out there that involve stories. So you may have met this one before. You may not have done. That's fine. So let's see. These slightly random looking images, they do connect to what's coming. You will see. Look a bit random. Before the lesson, a little bit of prep for you. First of all, just select that useful vocabulary from recent units. It's nice here. It's nice here to have some vocab from different units and therefore sort of different lexical sets and different parts of speech can be nice. So you might have, some adjectives in there, some verbs, some nouns. That's quite handy for this one. Makes it a bit more interesting and you'll see why shortly. So select the vocabulary. Okay, and then write those words onto small pieces of paper, kind of like post-it note size, and pop them, if you're in a physical classroom, pop them into a hat or a bag, the sort of thing you might use if you do like a raffle with learners sometimes. Okay, if you're online, you'll just have to kind of give them the words, but if you're in the physical one, it's quite nice. Fold them up, pop them in a bag, and then students will be in groups. So I'd say typically kind of groups of 4 or 5, something like that. And each group will select, okay, so from the bag, if you're in the classroom, 5 pieces of paper. They won't know what words are on them until they open them, okay? They're doing it sort of blind, okay? Take the 5 pieces of paper. And then tell the groups at this point, don't shout out the words that they've got. Okay, these are for now secret words just for their group to know. This is where actually online, this is quite nice because they'll be in a breakout room, so they can't kind of get too excited and shout to anybody else. But they've got these 5 secret words, and with those words, they're going to write a story. Okay, a short story. It's not going to be an epic piece, but it does have to have context. It does have to be a story that includes those 5 words. So it might be useful to give them some sort of word limit to kind of aim for, just to make sure there is a story there. Okay, so they'll work together. It's a very collaborative task, this. So they're going to work together to come up with these ideas and create this story with these 5 words that they've got. And then, once finished, ask them to remove those 5 words. So if in the physical classroom, with Tipp-Ex or whiteout, something like that. Okay. If online, deleting the words, but still making sure there's a space there. So it's clear where a word has been removed. Okay. And now they're going to swap their story with another group. Okay. And the other group is going to read the story and try to guess, work out, deduce what the 5 missing words are, what those gaps could have been. Okay, so they're going to work together and kind of discuss, and they're going to have some clues. Okay, first of all, again, these are words that they will have met over recent units. Okay, you might even want to be nice and tell them which units they've come from. Also, though, they've got the clues of the other words, around them. So in terms of helping them determine like the parts of speech, say they'll have maybe articles in there and auxiliary verbs, etc., that will help them. But yes, they're going to try and work out what has been deleted from the story. And then they'll get together with the other group and discuss, okay, and see how close were they to the original. Okay, and I mean, it might be that they've got some of the same words as the original was, and great, how interesting, good. It might be, you know, it may well be that they've got different words, perhaps some that actually still maintain the overall feel or vibe of the story, and that's interesting, cool. It may be, though, that they've gone for something quite different. Grammatically, it may well work, but it's actually kind of changed the, you know, kind of, again, the feel or the vibe of the story. It might have taken it down a much darker route or something, who knows? But yeah, quite interesting to, you know, to discuss that and kind of analyze, and, you know, why did you think it was that? What made you think it? So yeah, quite nice, a bit more kind of creative one, this one. So, I mean, why I like this, I mean, again, still getting them, you know, reusing that, you know, target language, that key language that, you know, is maybe going to potentially arise in an exam that's coming up. Also, it really does encourage learners to contextualize the vocabulary, which helps them remember it. If we, you know, are trying to just remember random words in isolation, it's not going to stick very well, is it? Whereas here they're actually, yeah, putting it into this story, giving it more context, which is nice. And yeah, very student-centered. You may well have noticed that actually what's happening is one group is creating a gap fill for another group. So it's a really nice student-centered task, this. But yeah, and linked to the above point, you know, more context than your typical average gap fill, because obviously those usually anyway, it's sort of individual sentences with one gap. Whereas here we've got this story. So, you know, more contextualized again. And yeah, it does help students to work out or deduce the missing words based on the information they do know. Okay, and this is a really useful skill for exams, but also, you know, for more broadly than that as well, that deduction, you know, because it could be, you know, in an exam when they're dealing with a reading text of the word that they just don't remember. But don't panic. You probably can get quite close to what it means by reading around it. Okay, looking at what comes before, what comes after. Okay, can hopefully, you know, you can get quite close. It also with listening. Okay, they may just not hear a key word, they miss it. Oh, but if they can kind of remember, you know, what came around it, again, they can deduce, work out what it must have been, or at least kind of get close to it. So, you know, useful to get them practicing this in lessons and raising their awareness of it and the fact that they can do it. And of course, there is a little bit of writing fluency coming in here as well, as they're creating the story. Oh yeah, sorry, and as well, yeah, great one for getting them working collaboratively together. Okay, sharing ideas, supporting one another, which is nice to see. And in some exams, there is some collaborative elements as well. And we'll mention that again in the next one, actually. So that's Story Builder. Okay, now moving into speaking now, and obviously you'll have already noticed there's speaking in all of these activities, but this one is more focused on, you know, an exam style speaking task that we might see. So New Close-Up does have a great exam syllabus running through it. And you'll see if you have a look through that there's lots of exam tasks like this. This is one for speaking, but they have them, you know, for all the other different sections you'll find. So here, this is an example of a collaborative speaking task where in pairs, students will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of these different ways of studying. Okay, so watching videos, making notes, reading books, etc. A nice task and a useful task, right? Because, you know, the students are hopefully, you know, working out different ways of studying and trying things out. You know, this will be really helpful for them. And there's some useful language there in the blue box, which is really nice too. Okay, so helping them, yeah, kind of maybe vary a little bit how they're responding positively to a partner, you know, being able to prompt their partner in this sort of situation, interrupt politely, always a nice one. And ultimately as well, they're asking for a decision, because in these types of exam tasks, that's what students should be trying to aim for at the end, you know, come to some sort of agreement if possible. So a perfectly nice task, nice topic. Something that I'll occasionally do, though, just to kind of have a bit of variety, is I'm calling it 3-minute conversations, because typically this type of task, that's about the length of time they'll have in the exam. But yeah, it's slightly different, still based on the same task. Okay, but straight away, difference here, students are going to be in groups of 3 for this. Okay, so rather than the typical pairs. Okay. And you've got a little bit of prep to do beforehand. In those useful language expressions in the blue box, you can still see here. Ideally, use those or others, type them up, print them out, cut them up into, so you've got 1 per square, laminate them if you can, and then you've got these packs of cards with those useful expressions on. 1 pack per group of 3. Okay, so each pack has all of these expressions, or you can use others, of course. Okay, and yeah, 1 pack per group of 3. Now, these are all kind of generic expressions here. So, it sounds like a lot of work, perhaps, but you'll be able to use them for any sort of conversation task like this in other lessons. So it's worth that time investment. Okay, so you've got these packs of cards, and you'll give each group 1 pack. Okay, and you'll assign roles to students, A, B, and C. Okay, so students A and B are going to have the conversation. Okay, they're going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of studying in these different ways. Okay, so great, nice and interesting. However, we're going to add an element of competition now with those cards. So those cards are going to be on the table in front of them. And every time they use one, they get to put it next to them. Okay. And then at the end of the conversation, when the 3 minutes are up, they will count up the cards. And the person that used the most wins. Okay. They get some sort of prize, however you want to do prizes in your classroom. Okay. So, student A goes, that's a good point. They can take that card, pop it here next to them. Of course, what you might be thinking is, what if students therefore just talk in these and never actually really have a conversation, never actually end up making a point? They're too busy just focusing on the expressions. Well, that's why student C is there. Okay, they're going to take on a teacher role here. Okay. And if they hear student A literally just talking in these, just going, that's a really interesting idea, that's a good point, not actually listening to anything student B has said, not actually ever saying anything else, they can go, no, put that back, you can't have that one. Okay, so they're kind of managing it, they're taking on that teacher role, and also, can make a note of other things to give feedback on at the end. And this kind of links in with peer teaching we mentioned earlier. This is really nice to get students doing, this peer feedback. So it could be that they, an argument that a student made for something, thought was, yeah, that was a really good point that you made. It could be, an adjective or something that they use. They thought, oh, that was nice. Okay, so they can make a note and give some feedback to their partners at the end. Okay, and then after that, change roles. Potentially they can use the same task again. There's quite a lot to be said about studying and advantages and disadvantages of these different ways. Or of course, you'll probably have a bank of similar kind of conversation ideas that you can throw in for them to use. Okay, but yeah, so still very much an exam task, but just varying it a little bit there. And again, just why I like doing this. Won't do it all the time, but sometimes, of course, still allowing for speaking fluency. Okay, apart from when student C has to maybe stop them if they are just talking in the cards. But speaking fluency, still that speaking task type. It does actively encourage them to use that useful language. Hopefully, with the activity as it is, having that nice big blue box with useful languages, hopefully students will use it anyway. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they kind of get fixated on this and they don't really notice it. So it's kind of more actively encouraging them to use that other language. And again, it's kind of paraphrasing going on with some of this, because what will often happen with a positive response, students will go, I agree. And that's great. It's nice. It's lovely. But if that's all they use, that is going to potentially impact them in an exam context, getting those higher grades. Also, outside of an exam context, it'll get a bit repetitive, won't it? So, encouraging them to use these other expressions. And, therefore it is a bit more challenging as well. It's sort of pushing them out of their comfort zone, not just relying on these things they're familiar with, using some other things instead. And, by doing this here in this safe space, those things will hopefully start becoming more natural to them, and they'll remember them and then use them naturally, by the time they get to the exam or wherever it is they're going. I do also like it because of the students taking on that teacher role. Students like that. Maybe, for some students, the first or second time they do it, they might feel a little bit weird. You can give them some help and guidance, of course, on, giving feedback, what sorts of things to look out for. But, after a couple of times, they quite like having this sort of, the power. They don't always want to give it back at the end as well, I've noticed with some of them. So it's it is quite nice to let them do that when you can. Okay, perfect. So now moving on to writing. Okay, and as I said before, we've got all these exam tasks running through New Close-Up, which are great. As well as the tasks, there's also connected tips too. So to really help support learners with different elements of the exam and the elements of the different tasks that they may encounter. Okay, so very supportive, promotes sort of learner autonomy as well. They've got the tips there. We're giving them the tools to support themselves. So this exam task, again, I really like it. It's a nice one because New Close-Up is a nice new course. So the topics are up to date and relevant. So we've got AI and chatbots here, and they're going to be writing an article about that. And this is something we see in the news, don't we? I read an article few weeks ago now about Air Canada, and a passenger had used the chatbot to request a refund, and the chatbot had said, yeah, sure, we can have a refund. But then Air Canada, real people at Air Canada, got in touch with the passenger and said, no, you're not entitled to a refund. Anyway, it went to court, and the judge actually ruled that no, Air Canada did have to pay because the chatbot had said so. So yeah, it's quite an interesting topic, lots that we can sort of say about it. However, it might be at times that you're using materials that are a little bit older, or you do just come up against something where you think that's really not that relevant for my learners. So this is where I'll use circle writing occasionally. Nice, if you can, to actually get students in a circle for the first stage of this. This is a nice one if you are teaching in a physical classroom. So get students in a circle, okay, and give them a piece of paper, A4 piece of paper, or they can take it from their notebook, and tell them to write the name of a topic on the top of the piece of paper, and a topic that they're sort of passionate about. Okay, it could be, a hobby of theirs, something they've taken an interest in, they know something about. So, for example, TikTok, that would not be my choice. Barcelona, it could be a place somewhere they visited on holiday at some point. Football, whatever, anything that is meaningful to them. So they put this on the top of the piece of paper, and then in the circle they'll pass the pieces of paper around. So every student gets every piece of paper, and with every piece of paper they will write a question. Okay, so for example, if they had football on the top of the piece of paper, which is the best team? What's the offside rule? If I got one that said TikTok, probably ask them, how do you use it? Because I keep getting people sending me things that I can never actually quite get into it. Never mind. But yeah, so they'll write a question, okay, about that topic, and then pass it round. Okay, and then by the end, the piece of paper will get back to the original person. So it's got their topic at the top, and then all these questions from their classmates about it. And then, they can go back to where they normally sit, and students will write an article. Okay, I've said article because that linked with the task I showed you before, but it Could be an essay would also work with this. If it's an essay style task your learners do in the exam, fine. But they'll write an article about their chosen topic, trying to answer the questions that were asked. And you can allow them to, do a bit of research if they need to, your choice. Of course, as well, you can still do what you typically do before an exam task of, eliciting from them perhaps, the structure that's appropriate, say, for an article, for an essay, if that's what you're doing. You might also elicit some sort of sentence starters, conjunctions, perhaps. Okay, so I'm not meaning throw all the exam task stuff out the window, but basically they're going to get to write about something that, they're passionate about, they're interested in. Okay. Great, thanks, Svetlana. Yes, they do like it. It is nice. Again, you're not going to do any of these all the time, but it can be nice, to give them a break, basically, from, always being given a topic. Of course, in the exam itself, they will generally have to write about what they're told to write about. Most exams do give them a topic, don't they? But that doesn't mean that's all they have to do in the classroom, right? So yeah, it still practices an exam style task, as I say, but yeah, certainly a lot more opportunities for personalization, writing about something that is personal and engaging to them. And yeah, unsurprisingly, yeah, students like to share their knowledge on their specialist subject. We do, don't we? It's nice to impart, some information about something we enjoy to others, and it can be a really nice way of for students to kind of get to know about each other and maybe find out about hobbies that students have that they never kind of knew about or imagined. I did something similar with some trainee teachers once, and someone wrote about mushroom farming, and it turned out they did mushroom farming, and I'd known this person about 3 weeks on an intensive course by that point. It had never come up, but it was really interesting. The thing with the questions as well is it does help and provide guidance on where to go in at with this subject. So, sometimes when we have a sort of a passion project, something we're really keen on, it can be easy to kind of go in up here in terms of, assuming a lot of prior knowledge, but these questions can kind of help students gauge, where to start. So say if it was sort of TikTok and I was one of the readers, start right at the bottom. Okay. And yeah, it just can be a bit more interesting for learners than what they typically experience. Good. Svetlana, you say, yeah, we can do this circle writing online as well. You can, of course, yeah, obviously not, you won't have the circle idea, but absolutely. No, there are certainly ways around it. Yeah, absolutely. No, great. Perfect. So something that I then like to do after a circle writing task, but also after any other writing task as well, is what I call a gallery walk. Okay, and you may well have seen this before. And if you think about it, writing does entail typically quite a lot of sort of students sitting, working alone. There might be sections where they get together for planning and editing, but there's quite a bit of alone time. So the gallery walk gets to sort of kind of wake people up a little bit and change the dynamic. And you're turning your classroom into a gallery for a little while. So putting the pieces of writing, the articles, the essays around the room, okay, a little bit harder online, but there will be ways to do it for sure. Maybe, using kind of Google Drive or something like that could potentially work. And I'm sure you could think of other ideas too. There'll be lots of options. But yeah, in this case, putting it around the room, if you are in the physical space, and give students a task. So they're all going to stand up and walk around and read the articles, but do give them a purpose for it. If you just tell them walk around and read, maybe they will, maybe they won't. So simple questions you can give them. What will you steal? So we could think here about kind of grammar and vocab, sort of language, or organization, structure. So it might be that they notice that someone's done a really nice, clear, succinct introduction to their article or their essay, and oh yes, I need to remember to do that, or some structure or words they use. I thought, wow, that was really good. It could be, what have you learned? So thinking here maybe more about the topic. What's a key takeaway from this article that that's an interesting fact. I'm going to try and remember that. If you do it after a circle writing style activity, was your question answered? Have you found out whatever it was you wanted to about football, TikTok, or whatever the topic was? Okay, so, just quite a nice way to, change the dynamic a little bit if you are in the physical space, getting them up and moving around. But I think, a key thing for me as well as that is it does encourage learners to read each other's work and learn from one another. And I'm sure, you probably do encourage learners to read their partner's work. It's sort of kind of a pair check style activity. But what I tend to find is students always, in the physical space anyway, sit next to the same person every time if they're given the choice. This way, they do get to kind of share ideas more greatly and find out about other people. And like I said, with, that trainee teacher I had before, finding out that, there's mushroom farming, getting to know people that they don't always get a chance to speak to. And getting them up and moving if you are in the physical space, just to kind of, wake everybody up a bit, which is always nice. Okay, great. Now, one final activity, but it's kind of a big one. I've put it under listening, but actually, as you'll see, it does involve a range of skills. And actually does lead into a language focus, typically a grammar focus. And this activity is called a dictogloss. Have you heard of this before? It looks like I made it up, I will admit, but I didn't, I promise. Okay, I promise, Svetlana, even though you haven't heard of it, I promise. If you Google it, you'll see it is real. Okay. No, well, that's great that you haven't. Some of you have. Okay, lovely, lovely. No, it's nice. Ellie has, great. Okay, fantastic. But yeah, so we're going to do a bit of one together because it's one that there's quite a few sort of stages to it. So just kind of going blah won't necessarily be as meaningful. So you're going to be my students now for a moment. Okay, so here are 3 pictures. Sorry, a couple of them are a little bit darker. They help to tell a story. Okay, so they all connect together. Have a look at them. What can you see in them? And what could the story be? Okay, so, a ferry trip. It does look a bit like that. Yeah, good, good. Okay. Now, you might not use this particular story with students. I do know we've got beer at the bottom, and so I know this is just an example with you as my student. Okay, just to clarify that, I did get asked that question. Okay, social gathering, celebration, perfect. So yeah, a bachelorette party could be, yeah. So yes, we've got beer, we've got a band, we've got. Can you see it in the one where it does look like a ferry? There's a man playing the piano in the corner. It's a bit dark, I know. We've got a bar, so it could be some sort of party. Okay, I'll get students in the classroom to discuss this in pairs as well to come up with a story. Obviously, we can't do that on here today. Okay, party on a certain occasion. What occasion could it be? Okay, presenting a new band song. Right, what men like. Okay, Anna, thank you. Yes, perfect. Okay, a band's trip. So it could be, so this band is on a trip and they drink beer, and then there's this man playing the piano, and how is he connected? Anyway, so hopefully you've got some sort of idea of maybe, what the story could be. Okay, be as inventive as you like and encourage your students to be as well. I'm now going to tell you the story. So please listen and check your predictions. Okay, you don't need to write anything, so pens down. I'm going to just have to trust you because I can't see you. Pens down and just listen. Were your predictions correct? So my husband used to live and work in the Czech Republic, and every weekend he went out with the other teachers. They'd usually have a few beers. On Sundays, they used to see live jazz. One Sunday evening, he got a little tipsy, went up on stage and started playing the piano. To his surprise, the band didn't mind and he played for the rest of the evening. It was only the next day that he found out the performance had been recorded for MTV. Okay, So now I'd get students back in pairs to discuss, how close were their predictions. So we certainly had sort of, band involved. We'd got, and beer was sort of mentioned. But yeah, was anyone thinking kind of along those lines? Wow, what a story for that. Do you think it's a true story? I'll ask you that now because I usually forget. So we will deal with that now. Think it's true? Could be. Yeah. No, but perhaps it is actually true. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody watched it, so it's still not famous. It's probably on at like 2 a.m. on a Monday. But yeah, it was true. Anyway, so now, next part. Okay, I will get students to listen again for keywords. Okay, but again, still no writing. Pens will be down. Okay, I'm not going to actually do this bit with you because we are running out of time, unfortunately. But ask you to listen for keywords, and good to elicit here what keywords are. So, basically nouns, verbs, adjectives, those sorts of things. So, learners shouldn't be listening for, articles and prepositions and stuff like that, just those keywords. So I will read the story to them again. They will listen for the keywords, no writing. As soon as I finish the story, I will tell them, okay, pick up your pens and write the keywords. Okay, so then I'm going to write the keywords. So maybe because obviously you're fantastic, you might still remember some keywords, even though I've only read it to you once. Okay, so feel free to put any keywords you remember in the chat. But yeah, so they'll be writing down these keywords. Okay, there might be some collocations they remember, could be. Okay, so I mean, beer, tipsy, MTV. Okay, maybe those are the ones I always remember, and I read this quite regularly. But yeah, so they'll be writing those down, and then get them to then check with a partner, okay, and share the ideas together, okay, steal some words from their partner, okay. And then I will let them listen one more time, still pens down, okay, but listen one more time for more keywords. They might want to kind of make some changes or adaptations to the words that they've got. Maybe they realize, oh, that wasn't quite the word that I thought it was. And again, check with their partner, steal some things as necessary. But yeah, they've now got all these keywords. And they need to, with their partner, write the story as close as possible to the original. Okay, but they've got support here because they've got this list of keywords. So they should have a range of nouns and verbs and adjectives, all right? So they're going to use those, but they're going to have to now put them together into this story and kind of work out, what's going to actually connect them all together. So they'll be working away. You can be monitoring. If you're in the physical classroom, obviously walking around, having a look. If you're doing this online, then this is great, to use Google Docs for this. So you can kind of go in and see how students are doing, with their stories. Okay. And then at the end, I'll show them the original. Okay. So this was what I read out to you. Okay. And I'll ask them to compare. Okay, now I always use these with a particular language focus in mind, and I'll show you what that is in a moment. But it is a nice one as well for us just to kind of diagnose some other things too that we might notice. All right, so it can help us kind of work out maybe where we need to focus later on. But the focus that I had in mind is around things like this. So we've got my husband used to live here, and we've got this here. They'd usually have a few beers, so they would. What do you think students will have written here? Do you think they will have come up with, say they're sort of pre-intermediate, low int, do you think they'll have used to and would? Some might, but what might you see more of with this, bearing in mind that, they've just got the keywords to use? Typically, you'll see quite a bit of past simple instead here. So yeah, as you say, Svila, some of them maybe will have come up with that. Yeah, because they at this level they may well have met these, but yeah, even still, quite often if they've got, you know, husband, live, work, chances are they end up doing my husband lived and worked in the Czech Republic. They still sort of have that kind of slight over-reliance at times on the past simple. So you know, this is the focus that I've chosen, you know, when I wrote this particular text. Okay. So I'll then ask learners to underline those phrases and tenses that that are being used in my version to talk about past habits, states, single actions. And then basically we're just doing here a guided discovery now. So this is where we're then moving into the grammar lesson. Okay, and obviously you'll see activities such as this one in course books, and you can potentially even use this from a course book, but doing it this way with the dictogloss sort of part beforehand, the telling a story and students then recreating it, that you don't see in course books. So it is a nice one for giving learners a bit of a break from the course book. I mean, I'm here to promote course books, but you know, every now and again, it can be nice to do something a little bit different. Okay, give them a break from that, develop some different skills, and we're going to look at those skills in a moment. But yeah, they'll then complete this task, notice, you know, how the language was used, and analyze kind of why it was used. So this is the full structure here. Now, we haven't had a lot of time for this today, but if you are, you know, interested in this, if this is kind of like, oh, you know, I'd like to find out more, do give it a Google. You'll find lots more examples online. There's sometimes a bit of variety in how they kind of all come together, but, you know, the basic premise, you know, you'll find is similar. But yeah, it's a nice one to use because it is a multi-skilled task, which is, you know, reasonably rare. You know, there's listening, there's speaking when they're in pairs, there's writing when they put the story back together, reading, then, you know, to compare the original with their own. And it does, especially if you do it, you know, more than once, you know, again, not all the time, but it does encourage that active listening and focusing in on the key words, which is really helpful for, you know, exams as well, getting, you know, noticing where the key words are. You know, it can be useful as well to maybe have a bit of a focus on like sentence stress and stuff with this too, getting students to notice that, you know, in English, we do, you know, stress the content words more. So it, you know, you can kind of do a bit of a focus on that. But yeah, you know, you'll use this generally with a key kind of focus in mind, but great for then noticing other gaps too. You know, if when they've put their story back together, you know, they've missed out some of the articles, say, or they've, you know, used other prepositions, if, you know, and you can then kind of bear that in mind for future lessons. You know, again, a very collaborative task too, getting them working together, supporting each other, and kind of similar, but kind of the opposite to the story builder activity earlier. You know, it is encouraging students to work out, you know, the missing words. You know, they've got the key words this time, but they need to then try and work out how to put them back together. You know, so I know this is a noun, so with this noun, I need to think about, you know, be it, you know, an article, usually there'd be an article, what one would go with this, etc. So they have to think about all those nitty-gritty bits that that they need to recreate the story. Okay, great. No, thanks for your comments in chat. I am noticing them, so I'm pushed for time. Great. So that's the end of the activities. I just want to very quickly mention some other kind of features of new close-up. So in terms of exam support, so I've said it already, you know, there's exam tasks and exam tips for students, and they're all, you know, nice and up to date. So lots of support and practice there for learners for all different sections in exams. For you, there's also plenty of support. Okay, so you know, lots of support in the teacher's book. So in terms of exams, which is the focus here, so the yellow kind of box there, the one with the orange yellow bit, that's in the student's book, but the blue version, that's in the teacher's book. So if any of you, you know, are preparing learners for exams and maybe haven't done that so much before in the past, or even if you have, you know, there's some advice and guidance there that, you know, will support you, or maybe give you, you know, some extra ideas on things you can do to help your learners. We've then also got Spark that I mentioned earlier, new close-ups on there, as are all our new courses. So Spark is a great support for you for all different things that you do. As teachers, we have so many roles, don't we? And Spark is kind of there for each of them. So, starting off with placing learners, there's teacher resources there, classroom presentation tool, work you can assign learners, and then automatic grading and a grade book. So I'll just very quickly show you here. So, starting off with an online placement test, which does adjust as students go through it. So, based on how well they're doing. So if they, are coming out with sort of a lower level answers, they're not going to suddenly be overwhelmed by, kind of advanced grammar. So that's nice, and does then put students into one of 14 CFR bands. So helping you identify, where they need to be. We've then got, for in the lessons and also in the planning stages, all these teacher resources available. The full teacher's book is on there, worksheets, tests, etc. So, lots and lots of support. The classroom presentation tool, embedded audio and video, as well as answer keys. If there's a workbook, which there is for New Close-Up, you can click over to that nice and easily as well in there. And it is basically the student's ebook that you've got there. And that's also available for learners in the platform, as well as this online practice that you can assign to students. They'll complete it, and the vast majority is automatically graded, so saving you, lots of time, especially if you've got, larger groups. As well as practice tasks, you can also now assign tests to learners online, and quite a lot of tests are moving to more of a digital way of being done. So, quite useful as practice for learners if they might be taking an online test in the future. And then just to quickly show you, this is the course gradebook. So all that work students do, it will feed through into this, and you can see there's nice color coding there, and you can click right in and actually see, the real nitty gritty of the actual answers students gave. So helping you kind of really diagnose, where, the issues are, and then, support learners better. So that's it for me today. Don't go away. We'll have a quick break, and then we've got Ellie. I'll be quiet. I can see Tim's there. Good, fantastic. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Flo. That was amazing as always.
Oh, thank you.
Truly amazing. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Are there any questions for Flo before we have a break?
Please feel free.
If there are, please feel free to write them in the Q&A next to the chat. As you might be doing that, just one more thing I noticed, quite a lot of people seem to have their chat set for hosts and panelists. If you can change, if you go to the chat and change it to everyone, then everybody will be able to see the comments that you're making.
Yeah, thanks. I forgot to mention.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we have lots of love coming in for you there, Flo.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we're going to have a short break. We're scheduled for 3:15 to come back, so I think we'll just keep to the schedule. And so that gives us 6 minutes for a break, so you can go off and get a cup of tea or a banana or whatever you want to eat. Okay, so we'll see everybody back in 5-6 minutes. Thank you. Ellie, are you there?
I am.
Hey, Flo's coming back to join us as well. I think we can get started in probably 1 minute and we'll keep to the schedule. Just a very brief reminder to everybody just in the chat, if you can change from hosts and panelists to everyone. There was a few people that didn't have it set to everybody. So if you click the chat icon, then you will see you'll be able to change it to everyone. And with that, as we hit 3:15, where most people are, Ellie, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that okay? Yep, brilliant. Okay, great. So thank you very much to everyone for being here. Thank you for all of your participation in that first session, and thank you very much to Flo as well for such a brilliant start to today's Online Teachers Day. So I think some of you may have seen me before. For any of you who haven't, my name is Ellie, and I work with our products for young learners, but like Flo, my background is in teaching as well. So I taught for several years before moving to work with National Geographic and moving into more of a teacher training type role. So what we're going to be speaking about in this session is to do with teaching grammar. And we're going to be looking at, firstly, what is contextualized grammar teaching? We're then going to think about why we should be teaching grammar this way. And then we're going to look at how we teach grammar in context using New Close-Up and some ideas and some practical ways that you can do this in your classrooms. So I want to start with a question. And the answer to this question is something that I want you to keep in mind throughout the session. What is the purpose of teaching English grammar? And the answer is it is a means to an end. The end being communication. It's going to help our students to communicate in English. And this is something that we're going to come back to over and over again during this session. So I'd like you to bear it in mind. Okay, now in the chat box, I would like you to think, in general, how do your students feel about grammar lessons? And I'd like you to give them a number, put them on the scale. So 0 is going to be, I really don't like grammar lessons, I hate them. 10 is grammar is my favorite thing in the world and I want to do just grammar. Okay, so I've seen a few 10s, 8s, 4s, 5s, 6s. Quite a few 8s here, okay. Some 7s, some 9s, 3 to 4. So we've got a little bit of a variety there. For those of you who your students already are up around the 8, 9, 10 mark, that's fantastic. And it means that you are obviously already doing something very, very right in your classrooms, which is brilliant. For those of you who are down the lower end of the scale, that your students don't really like grammar lessons, be reassured that you are definitely not alone in that, and your students are not alone in feeling this way about grammar either. A lot of teachers, and this is teachers across the world, this is not only teachers in one particular country or one particular context, find grammar lessons tricky because it's hard to engage learners. A lot of students are not big fans of grammar and grammar lessons. So why do we think that is? Why do students sometimes not like grammar or not like grammar lessons? You could put maybe some ideas in the chat. Any thoughts? So not every teacher can explain well. Yeah, thank you, Svetlana. Any other thoughts as to why students maybe don't like grammar lessons? Okay, that's fine. We're going to talk about it. So, yeah, they don't like it. Some topics are hard to understand. Sorry, I should have given you slightly longer to type. The program's too intense. Students do not have time to absorb it. Bad experience from previous schools, don't want to think. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So there are lots of reasons why students maybe don't enjoy learning grammar and they don't enjoy grammar lessons. And that is partly because of how we sometimes teach grammar or how course books sometimes teach grammar. And that is when we teach grammar in isolation. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we're teaching grammar separately from other skills. We perhaps are focusing on the form and the meaning only of the grammar. We're not really thinking about how it's used and how students can use it themselves. They might not like grammar because of the type of exercises that we often do. We do lots of repetition of the same kind of thing. They have to manipulate different grammar structures. They have to transform different grammar structures. But that's not actually something that we tend to do outside of a grammar lesson. If we teach grammar in isolation, then maybe we're only actually focusing on understanding those grammatical forms. We're not thinking about the grammar as it's used outside that. It's quite often quite teacher-led and quite teacher-focused. And all of that really makes learning boring. It makes learning not really related to the real world and to what students see around them. Tatiana's just mentioned students don't like learning rules. Exactly, because they don't really see the point. They don't see this as something that they are actually going to use. So there are lots and lots of drawbacks to teaching grammar in this way. I think it's quite clear to say that in the 21st century, this is not the way to teach grammar. So what are we going to do instead? Well, we're going to think about teaching grammar in context. We're going to think about teaching grammar in a way that means that our students can practice using that language and they are able to communicate in it. So what's the solution? Contextualized and communicative grammar teaching. So what exactly is teaching grammar in context? Well, I'd like you in the chat box again to see if you can finish this sentence for me. Teaching grammar in context is what? What is teaching grammar in context? So it's important, it's enriching, applying grammar to real-world situations, using active vocabulary with active grammar. It's rewarding, it's using grammar in your speech, demonstrating how it works, using it in songs, showing students how to use grammar in real-life situations, in communication. It's understandable through texts, in real life, in everyday communication. Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, really good ideas there. Teaching grammar in context is really all of these things. Lots of these things that you've just mentioned are good examples of what teaching in grammar is and how to do it. Without context, grammar means nothing. It becomes just a formula, a rule. Students need to see and to hear grammar in action. They need to see its purpose, but they also need to see how they can use that grammar in the real world. So for the sake of lesson aims and lesson outcomes, it should never be to learn or to practice whatever grammar point. Rather, it should be to be able to talk about a particular situation or a particular function, because that in itself is more motivating for students. Then they can see the real world context of a particular grammar point. They can understand its purpose and how and why it's important to them. So, in other words, for a communicative grammar approach, we need to take a contextualized approach to grammar teaching. So we're thinking about grammar in context, using texts, using examples to teach grammatical rules and sentence structure. So we're thinking about where that grammar actually sits in the real world. Where do we see it? Where do we hear it? Where do we read it? So what are the benefits of this? Well, there are a lot of them. And I wanted to start with this quote from Scott Thornbury, because actually I think this tells us in the first place why this is important. It's going to help our learners to make sense of the grammar. It's going to help them to understand it. If we teach grammar in context, it means that it's integrated with the 4 skills. So whereas we said initially that when we teach grammar in isolation, we're just thinking about grammar on its own, here we're seeing how it's integrated, how it's combined. And it helps our students to understand it. So they're not just seeing it as a rule, as a formula, they're learning how it's used and why it's used. Related to that, we're not just thinking about the form and the meaning. We're also thinking about the usage. And again, I have a quote here from David Noonan, who suggests that teaching grammar in context is an approach through which students can learn how to form structures correctly and also how to use them to communicate meaning. So we're not only thinking of what it looks like, but how it is used. It means as well that our students can be more actively involved in the grammar lessons. We mentioned that teaching grammar in isolation is often very teacher-led and teacher-focused, teacher-centered. Whereas if we teach grammar in context, we can make things more inductive. We can encourage our learners to take more responsibility for their own learning and to become more autonomous. And actually, this is one of the real benefits of communicative contextualized grammar, is that it allows us to make our lessons more student-centered. The students are going to teach each other. They're going to figure things out for themselves, and the teacher is in the position of a guide or a facilitator. And the active role taken by students in this kind of classroom mimics the active role that they will have to take in the outside world when they're interacting with other speakers of English, when they are using that language in order to communicate. Teaching grammar in context is more memorable. So it kind of links to the fact that it's more autonomous, it's more inductive. It means that our students can not only work out the rules for themselves, understand how it's used for themselves, but that is going to help them to actually remember that language. It helps students to develop higher order thinking skills. So they're actually processing that information differently. They're learning how to use it and put it into practice. And that in turn is going to improve our students' speaking and our students' writing. It makes grammar learning more real world, because ultimately what our students want is to understand the point of what they're learning. And this is particularly true with teenagers. They don't want to learn something just because the teacher tells them it's important. They want to learn because they see the point of it, because they think it's something that they are going to be able to use for a real purpose. And again, another quote here saying about how it is a meaningful framework that connects to reality. It means that grammar learning is more personalized and more meaningful. And ultimately, it's going to make grammar less boring for our students and hopefully maybe sometimes fun. So what contexts can we use for presenting grammar? I've seen a few people say things in the chat already. I think we've already had songs, we've had comics, we've had memes. Can anyone think of any other contexts that we can use for presenting grammar? If you could put them in the chat box. Interviews, magazine articles, yeah. I really like those ideas. Dialogues, articles, any more? Video, Business, yeah. Chat, pictures, guidebooks, adverts, fantastic. Yeah, lots and lots of different ideas. Stories, miming, images, dialogues, fiction books, fantastic. Yeah, lots of really nice ideas there. So I've just put some of them on the screen, but yeah, really any different context where we find language or where we can use language to talk about what is happening. So anywhere that we can find language or ways to use language, we can use for presenting grammar. Okay, now we're going to look at a bit of an example now of exactly how we can teach grammar in context and what that actually looks like. So I'm showing you a picture here. And I would like you to know, first of all, that this, like the one that Flo shared, is a true story. Now, I'd like you to think about this place that you can see in this picture. Does anyone know where this is? Would anyone like to guess where it might be? It's Grand Canyon, Australia, the USA. Yes, you're on the right lines. Yeah, it is in the USA. It's in Utah in the USA, and it is called Blue John Canyon. So it's not actually the Grand Canyon. It's a different one, but very, very similar. Okay. Now, I'd like you to imagine that you are planning a day trip to explore this area. What kind of things should you do beforehand? And what things do you think you should take with you? So if you're going to this place, you're going to explore, what should you do beforehand and what should you take? So take water, yeah. Like clothes, water, comfortable shoes, hats, sunglasses. First get a travel visa, yeah. Imagine you've got the visa, you've got the paperwork, you're already in the country. So take a camera. You need to arrange your trip. Yeah. Imagine, so if you're already in the USA, you've got your visa, you've got everything, you're staying locally to this place. What sort of things should you do before you go? So inform yourself about the place. Take a first aid kit. Be in a good mood. Yep, that will probably help. Backpack with some food, clothes, equipment needed. Write a will. Check the weather forecast. I like that idea. Yeah, good. Okay, so maybe you might want to tell someone where you are going. Take a mobile phone. Take a map. Plan your route. Work out where you're actually going. Take some snacks, some water. Go with someone. Probably not a great idea to go on your own. We had this one. Check the weather forecast. And yeah, we've got lots of great other suggestions that you have come up with already. Thank you. Okay. Now, this person here, this is called Aaron Ralston. How do you think these two pictures are connected? So what does this man have to do with this picture? Any thoughts? So he was there, he got lost. He got lost there, he came there. Good, yeah, you're on the right lines. You're on the right lines, yeah. So Aaron woke up early one morning and he decided that he was going to go hiking in the nearby Blue John Canyon National Park. He'd been there a lot of times before. So because he'd been there lots of times before, he didn't do any of these things. Unfortunately, Valentina, I don't think he would be a very good explorer because he made some very foolish decisions. He didn't plan his route. He didn't pack a map. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He packed a few snacks and one bottle of water, but in his rush and his excitement, he forgot his mobile phone on the kitchen table. He arrived at the park early, so the park rangers weren't around to speak to. He didn't have a pen or paper, so he didn't leave a note. But despite this, he decided that he was going to go and explore. So yeah, I think some of you know what is coming. Now, after a couple of hours, unfortunately, he realized that he was completely lost. By this time, the day had become really hot and he was running out of water. And then disaster struck. As he was climbing down one canyon, he slipped and fell, and then a boulder fell on top of his arm, trapping him. He was alone, he had no way of contacting anyone, no one knew where he was, and he had nearly run out of food and water. Oh dear. So what do you think of Aaron? I saw there were some nice comments about how going somewhere lots of times does not make you a good explorer, doesn't necessarily make you sensible, doesn't necessarily make you good decisions. Any other thoughts about Aaron? What do we think of him? So he didn't prepare for the adventure. Definitely not. He's silly. Yeah, he was stuck. Absent-minded. Yeah, so bit silly, bit stupid. Okay, why? Reckless, good word. I like that one. Stupid. He did have some rope. This is true. He wasn't completely unprepared. But yeah, he was unable to analyze ahead. He was too self-confident. He was foolish. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Okay. So we can then ask our students some questions about this. We've told them or we've shown them some of the video about this story. We've asked them maybe, what do you think Aaron is thinking? What could he have done differently? Or even what would his mum say if she could speak to him in this situation? So yeah, really nice example there, Vasil. He should have prepared. Exactly. So we're getting our students to start thinking about this situation, but they are producing some language already, and it's language that we want them to be producing. So yes, he should have prepared. He could have prepared, although I also like he told you. I told you so. He could have planned better in advance. Definitely. Yeah, really nice ideas there. So if we were doing this in class, we would get our students talking about this first of all. They're producing some of this language, but they are doing it completely naturally, of their own accord. We can ask our students what they think happened. We can show them the trailer of the film that you mentioned, if possible. But then we're going to move on from that. We're going to get our students to focus a little bit more on some of that language. So we're going to ask our students to come up with some things that Aaron might say about this situation. So maybe some of these things. I should have told someone where I was going. I should have prepared. I shouldn't have left my mobile phone at home. I should have checked the weather. I could have left a note in my car. And also some ideas for what his mum might say. So, you should have told me where you were going. Do you think you should have gone on your own? You should have been more careful. You could have taken more snacks with you. So once we've thought about those sentences, we can ask our students, what grammatical structure have we used? What patterns can we see? What language can we see? So underlining them. Yes, some perfect modals. Yes, exactly. Obviously, our students are not necessarily going to produce them as perfectly as this, but we can reformulate them as we write them on the board so that we've got some correct models to work with. Yeah, so we're going to then underline the patterns, we notice them, and at this point, we would then go through the grammar and present the structure and how it's used and what it looks like. But we're confirming what our students already know because they've already come up with this language themselves. Okay, and the reason that we're going to do that is this, because working out those rules, looking at those examples, coming up with what they look like, when are they used, how are they used, is going to help our students remember those rules. But of course, this is just part of the process of the grammar lesson. We've presented the language, we've done that really effectively, really well. Our students have been really active and involved, but we still need to practice and produce the language. So what comes next in the lesson? Well, often in our course book, it's something that looks a bit like this, isn't it? Lots and lots of practice exercises. But are these the kind of activities the reason why we are learning grammar? No, these activities are not why we are learning grammar. Because actually, learning is not just remembering new information. We don't just want to do exercises. We don't just want to practice in these same limited structures because the learner needs to make sense of the new information and apply it in different situations. So one constructivist theory of how learning occurs by Richard E. Mayer explains learning in terms of these different things, in terms of retention, so remembering the information, and transfer, which is actually applying the information. And he says that when students are poor at remembering the information and applying it, the result is that there is no learning. When the retention is good, but they can't transfer that learning, they can't apply it to different kinds of situations, different contexts. This is when we see rote learning, memorization. But then what we're aiming for is down at the bottom, when we have good retention and good ability to transfer that language, because that is ultimately what then leads to deeper learning. And this also links to Bloom's taxonomy. Our students need to go beyond just remembering and understanding the target language. They need to be able to apply it in different situations, i.e., they need to transfer it. So in order to do that, they need a task in order to apply it. And as a result, we need to be thinking about some communicative tasks. So this could be something like a role play, thinking about a conversation. It could be getting our students to personalize it by thinking about themselves and their own situation that hopefully they're not in or haven't been in, but they're thinking about it as it relates to them. Or equally, as it might relate to themselves in the future, what they could have done or what they should have done if they're in the future and looking back on their lives. Or just a simple, do you regret doing anything? Tell your partner about it and what you should or shouldn't have done. So we're thinking about actually using that grammar in communication to actually transfer that information from just doing the exercises in the book to then thinking, how can they use that language? Now, before we go any further, I just want to make a brief note about lesson goals. So we're thinking about what are our aims for a lesson. So what are the lesson goals? Is it to learn about the past simple, to learn about the differences between will and going to, or to learn about conditionals? Well, no, grammar is not a purpose or goal of its own. The goal is to use that language. And so the lesson goals should reflect that. So the goal is better phrased as talking about what we did at the weekend, talking about future plans, talking about hypothetical situations, or in this context that we've just had, talking about regrets in lots of different contexts. Yes, so as Svetlana said, being able to use that target grammar in real life. Now, before we go any further, Okay, so now we're going to think about how grammar in context looks in New Close-Up. So we've got some examples here. And again, you can see that we've got that language in context. We've got a text with the grammar in before we're going to ask our students to actually do some exercises focusing on the structure of that grammar, focusing on working out the rules for that grammar. So we're presenting the language in a context, not just as isolated examples of the grammar points.
Unit 8, Grammar.
Okay, going to go back a moment. Okay, so I'm just going to play a short conversation for you. And I'd like you to listen and I'd like you to think, what is this conversation creating context for? So listen to the short conversation. What grammar point do you think this is focusing on?
Unit 8, Grammar. Exercise 1.
I'm going to buy some water from the shop. Do you want anything?
No, thanks. And you know, you really shouldn't be buying water in plastic bottles.
Seriously? Come on, it's just one bottle. It's not going to make any difference to the environment.
Well, actually, it might. If it ends up in the sea, it'll float around for years. And if a fish or a bird eats the remains of your bottle, it might get ill. Doesn't that bother you? I know it's just one bottle, but if everyone stopped buying things like plastic bottles and throwing them away, it could make a massive difference.
Maybe, but it doesn't help me much now. I'm really thirsty.
OK, when you need some water, drink some from the water cooler, but use your own cup. If you take a plastic cup and then throw it away, it adds to all the other plastic rubbish. So it's just as bad as using a plastic bottle. You know what? I'd bring a reusable bottle to school if I were you.
I do, most days. But I was in a hurry this morning. I was worried about missing my bus. If I'd woken up earlier, I would have remembered to bring my bottle. But I didn't, so I forgot to bring it. Anyway, I really need some water. I'm going to be very thirsty if I don't drink something soon.
Well, if you ask me nicely, I might let you borrow my bottle.
Conditionals. Yes, brilliant. Well done, everyone. So we had a few different options because actually, yeah, as you've noticed, we don't just normally use one particular grammatical structure when we're having a conversation. We use different things. But yeah, in this example, it was to do with conditionals. And then when we actually focus on it, we ask our students to match the beginnings and the ends of the sentences. Okay, so this gives us the opportunity to practice the form and the meaning and the usage again. So we could challenge our students by asking them if they can remember how these sentences finished, or we can make it a bit easier. We can just give them the examples here for them to match. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to do this example, you get the idea. We can then, after we've put those sentences together, get our students to focus on the rules. So once they've seen the context, they've heard these sentences used, they've heard this grammar used in a real conversation, we're then going to focus on the structures. We're then going to focus on when we use them, when do we talk about these different things. Then we can get our students to work out the rules by looking at the examples. So we're moving to a much more communicative, much more interactive, more inductive way of teaching that grammar. And then again, obviously, we have got our practice activities. And we've got lots of control practice both in the student's book and on the Spark platform. But what do we want our students to be doing? We want them to actively be using the language in order to communicate. Control practice is useful, but we don't want all of our focus to be on that. And that's one of the real advantages of the Spark platform, in that you can use it for your students to do at home. They can check their answers themselves. We don't need to use class time to do it. We don't want to be spending all of our time doing these types of activities because, as we said at the beginning, the purpose of teaching English grammar is a means to an end, and the end is communication. We want our students to be able to communicate. And the reason there is because we want our students to have to communicate real meaning. We want them to use their natural strategies for language acquisition, because that's going to help them to actually learn to use the language. So once our students have done that controlled practice, what can we do? Well, we can give them opportunities to use the language in conversation, to use it as it's used in real life. We can use discussion activities such as these ones. So give our students some questions, get them to work in pairs or threes or even larger groups, get them to think about their answers to these ones. We could do a class mingle type activity. So we can give each of our students one of these questions. For example, get them to all stand up, everyone walk around, ask as many people as they can in a time frame their question, and try and remember as many answers as possible, because then we can do some feedback at the end and they can share what they have learned. We can use a choice board as well, so we can give our students the option of how they practice the language. Some of our students may actually want to do more controlled practice. You can see that as one of the options on the choice board to complete extra controlled practice worksheets. But the other options are going to give our students a lot more freer practice, and giving them the choice allows them to introduce their own sense of autonomy. It allows them to do what they want to do rather than what the teacher tells them to do. So yeah, they do like making choices, definitely. Okay, but what do you do if no context has been provided? What can you do? Well, don't panic, stay calm. Context is everywhere. Svetlana, I love it. You create it. Great. Think about the content that you have available to you and be creative, because that is what teachers do. You see what is available to you and you are creative. So in this particular example, you've got a text here. This is in the reading lesson that comes before the grammar lesson. So you don't even necessarily need to look for examples and be creative in the lesson that you're looking at. You can look at a previous lesson that your students have already studied for information, for resources. So using this text, we could, for example, write some questions for our students. So if we had these examples of questions, these are actually creating context for a grammar point. And the grammar point that we are creating context for here is this one, used to and would. So there's lots of examples in the text of used to and would. And by creating those example questions, we are giving our students more examples as well of this grammar point and how it is used. But how can we make it more interesting for our students? Well, the key here is personalization. We should always try and personalize any new language to make it relevant to our learners. So we could have a find someone who type activity, give our students a worksheet like this one, ask our students to go around the classroom and ask their classmates until they find someone that they can write down for each of the questions. And this is a really good example here because it's going to get your students as well to focus on the fact that the form is different if we're asking a question. So we're going to be asking questions with did you used to. We can also have discussions, get our students to think about how we can use that language. How was life different 50 years ago? What did people used to do more? What do people used to do less of? What didn't they used to have? What didn't they used to do? And think of at least 10 differences. So if we haven't got the context, we find the context, we create the context, and we also create opportunities for students to use that language and to use that grammar in communication. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that there is still no definitive blueprint for teaching grammar. So although we've been talking about teaching grammar in context, we don't 100% always know that this is the only way that we can teach it. But the one thing that does remain clear, and the one thing that does remain uncontested, is that grammar is most likely to be understood within the context of authentic reading and writing activities. And I would add speaking activities to that as well. So by presenting grammar in this way, in context and with opportunities for our students to actively use it, we are helping our students to understand that grammar and to learn it, to apply it, and to remember it. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time this afternoon and your participation, and all of your thoughts and ideas. They've been brilliant, and I've really enjoyed speaking to you this afternoon. Okay, does anyone have any questions before we think Irina and Tim have a few thoughts just to wrap up? Brilliant.
Ellen, truly amazing, inspirational, I would say. If anybody does have any questions, please write them in the Q&A. Really lots of great practical tips. So thank you very, very much, Ellie. And also thank you to Flo as well for a great presentation. So I think as we're kind of thank you, Flo. That's great. And I'm sure we'll be seeing Flo and Ellie again very, very soon. Irina, are you still there? Irina's maybe just gone for a cup of tea or something, so we'll see Irina again soon. So a big thanks to Irina and all the team at Linguist as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today. So just a couple of things before we finish. As Irina said at the beginning, the certificates you will receive from Linguist within about 10 days. And the recording of today's webinar conference sessions you'll receive from Zoom. So you'll look out for an email from Zoom and you will receive that within 24 hours. I've just put together a quick contact sheet, actually, which I'm going to share. So you have Irina's email.
Oh, I will just post it. Give me a second.
Okay. I have it because I have also a couple of links here, Irina, for people. Let me just share my screen. Give me 1 second. And if you can also put them into the... Let's just go into here. So if you're interested in New Close-Up, if you go to eltngl.com/New Close-Up, you can find lots of information on the New Close-Up series. And if you go to eltngl.com, this is our main company website for National Geographic Learning, and you can find information on all of our products. If you want to look at these locally, you can go to linguist.ngl.com.ua. So please make a note of that website as well. Or you can go to linguist.ua as well to have a look at the products there. You can see there Irina's email. So any questions you have locally, please feel free to contact Irina. And I know Irina's a great help with contacting people quickly who need support. Or you're more than welcome to contact me as well at tim.pierce@cengage.com. And if you are on LinkedIn, feel free to contact or connect to me on LinkedIn or on Instagram as well. So that's kind of where we are with the contact. Does anybody at all have any questions before we finish? Irina, do you want to say something? We may have slightly lost Irina. But I hope everybody's enjoyed it, which there seems to have been lots of positive feedback coming from the chat, so that's been great. I hope you found the sessions very practical, both Ellie's and Flo's, and we look forward to seeing everybody very, very soon. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. The weekend is approaching as well, so have a really nice weekend. Thank you very much. Bye.